Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Love Therapy Online. This week, we're going to give a continuation about our topic of the souls. So, the 3 Thursdays of the purpose of souls. Today, we have part two, the fight against a tasteless love life. The Bible tells us in the book of Colossians, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. Very well. So today we're talking about a relationship killer or a relationship blessing. Everything to do with the words that we speak, the words that we communicate. And when we talk about words, what comes to my mind immediately is the creation of the world, because we human beings, we are the only species here on earth that we have the ability to speak and communicate. God has given us the privilege and the power to use words. And why is that? Why only the human beings? Because we were created in the image and likeness of God. So God is the Word. Jesus is the Word. And in the beginning of the creation of the world, everything God created was through the power of the Word. Actually, the first thing He created was the light. Remember in the book of Genesis where it says, let there be light. And why light? Because without light, you can't see what you're doing. You need light in order for you to work, in order for you to move and travel. And just like God used His words to create the universe, the earth, and everything in the earth, in the same way, with our words, we create our own world, meaning our family, our relationships, our love life. All of this is based upon how we use our words. And if we use our words intelligently, just like the Creator did, then we create our world where we live in together with our family and loved ones, our spouse, our children, our parents, and we can create a world where there's happiness and unity, where there's prosperity, where there's productivity and progress. So this is what we'll be touching on today, the power of our words. And beginning with that, I would like to bring you back to the Bible verse that we were reading here. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know you ought to answer how you ought to answer each one. Very well. So when we talk about let your speech always be with grace, I'm thinking about the word pleasantness. So a person that speaks with grace is a person that is pleasant to be around, a person that is pleasant to listen to, a person that has a pleasant word to share. And this means the person needs to know how to practice emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Let's give you an easy example for you to understand, because especially when you take the example between your home and your workplace, your family home and your workplace. Sometimes you may be at home with your loved ones, and sometimes you may say things that are not helpful, or you don't feel like answering in a nice way. You allow your feelings, your emotions to speak louder than your intelligence, your wisdom. And why is that? Sometimes because people give excuses and they say, okay, but this is how I grew up. This is my upbringing. This is my background. In our family, we used to be loud. In our family, we would be very frank with one another. And they bring this into their marriage. And they just think that this should just continue because they are being themselves. And they don't realize that their mannerism, their way, their attitude is not helping the relationship. But then when the person is in their workplace, in our workplace, everybody wants to behave well because nobody wants to lose their job. If you lose your job and you end up being unemployed, it means that there's no income. So sometimes people, they know how to practice emotional intelligence, control their emotions at work because they understand there are consequences and they don't want to lose their job. But at the same time, at home, with their loved ones, with their spouse, with their children, with their parents, they don't want to practice the emotional intelligence. And often the devil lying to the person, telling the person that they cannot change, or it's hard or difficult for them to change their mannerism. But that's a lie, because if a person can practice this at work, of course they can practice this at home. So when we talk about let your speech be always with grace, pleasant, a person must understand that our speech can either save a relationship or it can kill a relationship, can save a family, can destroy a family.
You are speaking, and I'm thinking when we got married, because I grew up with my father. It was almost death, right? He couldn't hear.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up. You already know what
Because your dad using
no, now he uses a hearing aid.
the hearing aids.
But I grew up with my dad not wearing a hearing aid. So in order for me, for him to hear us, we had literally to scream. It was not even to shout. It was like screaming, speaking very, very loud. Early in the morning when he was listening to his programs, television was loud, like the whole neighborhood would hear it. So I grew up accustomed to hearing things very loud and also speaking very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not that I was shouting, but when we got married, one of the first things you said, "Oh, always complain, huh? Why are you shouting?" And then I said, "I'm not shouting. I'm not shouting. I just have to fine tune now." Understand that you are not deaf, and then you can hear. But it took me a while to adjust to that. So it was hard work. But another thing, because in the church we work with a lot of pastors and wives that are Brazilian.
Mm-hmm.
Just for you to understand how we have to adjust in order to live in harmony, to for our speech to have grace. Some words in my country, we say it, is not a swear word. Okay, so Portuguese people, Brazilian people, we speak the same language, but there are certain ways you say things that for Brazilian people is like an insult, is like you are swearing, and vice versa. So because in the church we have a lot of Brazilian pastors, we are always speaking with Brazilian pastors, wives as well. So I had to, change my wording, not to offend anyone. So it was, I had to learn, this in your country is a swear word, so I am not going to say it. So why am I going to stick to my roots, to my country, upbringing, the cultural upbringing? Why am I going to hold on to that, but leave, not live in peace with someone else because I insulted them? So I had to adjust my vocabulary. I had to speak words that were more neutral. That sometimes I speak things that Brazilian people speak, not Portuguese people speak. So I had to make that adjustment in order for us to have a good environment, good relationship. I didn't change my accent like Brazilian people, but I changed wordings. The words are what matter, is what communicates, is not the accent, but the words we choose, the words we pick. So I had to adjust that. So it's not, sometimes people, they are afraid, but I'm not going to be myself, I'm being a hypocrite. No, it's not being a hypocrite. It's just fitting to the environment, being pleasant. Today we are speaking about speech. And this week during the Real Talk, we are reading and reflecting on Proverbs 31 about the virtuous woman. And one of the verses that we reflected on this week was exactly that. The virtuous woman, wisdom is in her mouth, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. So wisdom in the mouth, meaning is not speaking eloquently. You know how to speak very well. No, it's not about that. But wisdom is knowing what the limits of other people, and you are not going to cross that limit. You are going to respect that person, whether the person is your husband, whether the person is your child. Relationships we can build good relationships when we use our tongue not to put people down, but to lift them up. And this is not being a cheerleader, but is to use the tongue, to build. The Word of God says, whatever we say, it must be for edifying purpose only. And sometimes people, out of anger and sticking to their own ideas, their own ways, they end up saying things that they can never take back and will affect the relationship, will destroy the relationship. So we have to make these adjustments. It's a small thing, it's a small adjustment, but it will make a world of difference.
Yeah, when we talk about mannerism, and when we talk about, I'm thinking as well about people that have a hard time building relationships. Maybe you have a hard time getting along with people, or you struggle building good relationships. If a person struggles with healthy relationships in general, at work, at school, imagine in their love life. Think about that. Because if the person is very short-sighted and everything must be done their way, imagine if that person enters into a relationship and they get married with someone. Surely that person is not yet ready for a serious relationship, because a relationship it's all about communication, not only resolving problems but planning things. There needs to be plenty communication. One of the reasons why couples go through problems, unnecessary problems, and one of the top reasons of divorce, it's because of communication problems. So for the sake of and the betterment of the marriage, of the family relationship that you have, ask yourself this question before you say something. If I'm going to speak this, will this help? Will it benefit? Before I open my mouth and I'm going to say what I think, is this useful? Will this contribute in a positive way? If it doesn't, there's no need to mention it. There's no need to say it. And that brings us to the next point: clarity. What is clarity? Clarity in a relationship is to have a good understanding what needs to be done. Okay, in every relationship, you need to take on certain roles. You don't want two people to be doing the same job. That's not progress under any circumstances, in a business, in a workplace, in a marriage, in a family. Different people take on different roles. And if these roles are well defined, then everybody's making progress. The whole team is making progress. Then, for you to establish clarity, there must be communication. Now, did you know that many people, they often assume that their partner knows what they think? And this is a huge mistake and error. Nobody in this world is able to read your mind. No matter who you are, nobody can read your mind. Nobody can hear your thoughts. And sometimes this happens in a marriage, in a relationship where, let's say, the wife could be thinking like this: okay, don't you know that I'm working the whole day at home? I'm very busy taking care of the house, cooking, cleaning, and everything else. And the husband comes home and, he came from work, so his mind was at work, and he comes home and he may not notice that his wife needs a hand. His wife may need a little help. It could be by throwing away the garbage, the bin bag. It could be lifting some heavy stuff. In short, it's normal for the husband to contribute in the household. It's normal for the husband to help out. But when the wife thinks, he should know better, he should be able to see what I need, that's where people make the mistake of unnecessarily drawing wrong conclusions. And in order to avoid drawing wrong conclusions, there must be clarity. And how do you resolve this? Because nobody's a psychic, right? We don't read each other's mind. It's very simple: by asking one another questions. Do you need my help? Explaining the other person what kind of help you need, helping them understand. And there's nothing wrong with this, because even the Lord Jesus, in his word, he said, ask and you shall receive. So God knows us, God knows you inside out. He knows what you need, he knows what is lacking in your life, he knows what is missing in your life, but still, he wants us to ask him what we need. So he wants us to use our faith to express ourselves, though he already knows what we need. And we should practice the same thing in a relationship. Sometimes people are so long in the relationship, or because they are family, they live together, they just expect the other person to be able to know what they need, which is not always the case.
And I'm laughing because I used to be like that in the beginning of our marriage. Sometimes you'd say something or would do something that would upset me, and then I would turn, do the silence treatment. Like I say nothing, but my face is like, I don't know, elephant.
Lightning and thunder.
Yeah, lightning and thunder. I would be so, but no shouting, no screaming, nothing. Just a long face. You know what I mean? And then he would come and say, "What happened? What's wrong with you?" And then that would make me so angry because I would be thinking like this, as if he doesn't know. Like, how can you not know what you said? I was okay. After you said this, you didn't see the transformation. So I wanted you to know what you did wrong without me voicing it out.
Yeah.
Like we had a crystal ball in here, and then you understand what is in my mind. No one has this power, unfortunately. So it took me a while to understand that.
Yeah.
But I did learn.
Only God is omnipotent, omniscient, he knows everything, and omnipresent. Only God is the one that knows what is inside of our heads. Nobody else. So clarity, meaning communicating and being very clear to communicate what you need, what you don't need, what you expect, what you don't expect, the help that you need. In short, being very clear. And maybe you have even experienced that in your workplace, where if your manager, your employer, if they did not clearly communicate instructions, then you could not fulfill the requirements. Okay? Let's continue with the next point. Respect. Yes, respect. When we talk about respect, I'm thinking about agreeing and disagreeing, because we can be respectful when we disagree. It's normal that not everybody always agrees. It's normal that in a relationship, you may not always agree about every single topic, even amongst friends, in a family, in a workplace. You have people with different views, different life experience, and it's okay to disagree, to have a different point of view. But we can be respectful when we disagree, right? We can be respectful by expressing our view, and we can be respectful by listening to the view of the other person. We don't need to cut the person. We don't need to be aggressive. We don't need to force our views upon someone else. So respect is very important. And this respect is shown with our words. The words we choose, we can show a person whether we respect them or not, regardless whether we agree or disagree with the topic, with the view. Very important. And this is closely linked to the last point, tone of voice. The tone of our voice greatly impacts our relationships. And the tone of our voice can communicate happiness, sadness. If you've ever spoken to somebody over the phone, you could even notice if that person on the phone, whether they had a flu, if they were sick, if they were sad, unhappy, if they were in a good mood or in a bad mood. The tone of voice that we bring into a conversation or into an interview, for example, you go for a job interview, the tone of voice is so important because it communicates what's inside of us. It can communicate aggression. We spoke about this earlier. It can communicate respect or disrespect. And sometimes people need to be very careful when they come up with excuses to justify their tone of voice. Now, I have spoken like this all my life. And they may speak the way they speak, and they think, look, I have no ulterior motives. I don't have any bad intentions, ill feelings. The way I speak, this is me. This is natural to me. Very well, but we are all work in progress. It doesn't mean that we need to be playing the same tune for the rest of our life.
And even, for example, today Chloe decided to join the program.
Yeah.
All of us, if you have pets or if you take care of pets, all of us have a tone for the pet, right? When you don't speak to the dog, to the cat, the way you speak to people. Usually you do a funny voice, right? That's the way we speak to Chloe. But also we need to have this kindness, this tone when we speak to our loved ones, especially the spouse, right? So there is a kind voice for pets. Why you cannot do a kind voice for your husband? Sometimes you say the right things, but in the wrong tone. That sounds a completely different music. But when you speak the right thing with the right tone, is pleasant music, is music that you want to play over and over again. And that's why sometimes when you speak, no one is listening because it's the wrong tone, the wrong you are sending the wrong message with the wrong tone.
Yeah. Just to conclude, think about that. A person may have a nice tone in their workplace with their friends, but when they come home, they don't use that nice tone of voice with the people that are most important to them, their loved ones, the kids, the parents, the spouse, the husband, the wife. And sometimes because they take the relationship for granted, because we're always together. So since we're always together, then I can just speak to you anyhow. That is so wrong. Because if the person can use the right tone of voice with people outside of the home, even more importantly, they should use it inside of the home. If they can do it with a pet, more important than the pet is your husband, your wife, your kids, your mom, your dad. So the tone of voice that we use can make a greater impact than what you could imagine. Just one last thing that comes to my mind. Sometimes we need to ask somebody for a favor. We have a request. And just by using the right tone of voice, you make it easier for the request to be granted. And sometimes by using the wrong tone of voice, the person that would be willing to help you, willing to give you a hand, but using the wrong tone of voice, the person feels like unhappy, does not feel motivated to help. Imagine I come home and I tell you like this: go and get me a coffee. Go and get me a tea. You could get me a coffee, you could get me a tea.
I would say, yes, sir.
Yeah. And you would get it, and you maybe you would even say, "Oh, Lord, have mercy." But for me to change my tone of voice and for me to say, "Darling, do you think, are you busy? No? Okay. Do you think you could get me a cup of tea? Only if you are free, if you have time." Wow. You know, it gives the other person now the choice. Oh, would I like to serve my husband? Do I have pleasure to serve my husband? Then let me bring him a cup of tea. You know, either way, you would get me the coffee, the tea, but one with pleasure, one with joy. The other one, you feel like, okay, I will do it, but you did not really show a lot of appreciation and respect, right? So in short, today is a recap. We spoke about the power of the words, and we have touched on the word pleasantness. We have spoken about clarity of words. We have spoken about respect, and we have spoken about the tone of our voice. All right? Our words create our worlds. And if we choose our words wisely, we can create a happy world that we live in. We're talking about our family life, the relationships that we build. Okay? This is our second Thursday about the salt. And next week, we're going to conclude with part 3. If this has blessed you and helped you, share it with your family and loved ones. Join us again next week. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you all abundantly. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.